Ever wonder how a breakthrough idea actually becomes reality? Hi, I'm Susan Lindner, and this is the Innovation Storytellers Show, where I sit down with the change makers behind the world's most inspiring innovations to learn how they did it and the stories that help them make it happen. If you've ever had a big idea or want to tell yours in a more powerfully connected way, you're in the right place. I promise you'll get new ideas for how to tell a better story to your audiences too. So let's dive in. Welcome back. I hope you like my new setup here at the Innovation Storyteller Show. I am over the moon over this conversation that you're going to be hearing today. It is unlike any other, and that is because I am talking to two incredible innovation leaders who are at the helm of an organization leading the charge around innovation for one of the oldest brands in the United States that has always had your back, that has always been looking out for how to make life safer, more just, more available, more equitable for all of us, to ensure that consumer products are accessible and fair and give us the opportunity to enjoy them as they should be from the consumer's perspective, rather than the makers and the manufacturers, et cetera. And that brand is Consumer Reports. And I'm thrilled to have with me today you get a 2-for-1 today, two incredible leaders who are going to tell us what Consumer Reports is doing in this new modern age of when fraud is lurking everywhere, when consumer protection is a secondary thought, and when more Americans and folks around the world are using the internet and using technology in ways that we never conceived of at the beginning of Internet 1.0. So please allow me to introduce you to these two incredible leaders. Leah Fischman Hunter is an impact strategist working at the intersection of technology, media, and consumer empowerment. As the director of the Innovation Lab at Consumer Reports, she leads operations and forges strategic partnerships that accelerate the development and scaling of cutting-edge technologies in the consumer's interest. Yeah. Prior to Consumer Reports, Leah served as a vice president at Time Warner's Global Media Group and founded an impact consultancy advising clients on harnessing innovation for meaningful societal change. Leah serves on the board of directors of RealWorks, a nonprofit that empowers underserved youth through filmmaking and career pathways in media. And she is joined by Ginny Fahs, who is a product leader and social entrepreneur advancing AI and consumer technology for the public good. As director of Product R&D at Consumer Reports, she leads a team building AI-powered experiences that help people make informed product choices and take action in the market. She conceived and launched Permission Slip, which is an app we're going to be talking about today. It's a mobile app that helps people reclaim control of their personal data, and also led the development of Ask CR, an expert-powered advisor grounded in Consumer Reports' trusted ratings and reviews. Previously, Ginny was a software engineer at Uber and a tech policy fellow at the Aspen Institute. She's currently a lecturer at Columbia University, teaching tech for good and civil tech. I just want you to buckle up, folks, because this is going to be a phenomenal conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me both.
Thank you, Susan. Excited to be here.
Okay,
yeah, thanks for having us.
I just want to get into it. I have to let my listeners know that I have a personal relationship with Consumer Reports beyond my subscription. That is because back in 2004, Consumer Reports launched an initiative called Consumer Reports WebWatch. And back in the day, and this might be hard to fathom, but many websites didn't have the names of the corporate executives working and responsible for those companies. They did not have contact information. There was no email address. There was no way of knowing whether or not the product or service you were buying online could be reputably backed up by any particular company. There were no terms and conditions that you needed to sign. There was no stated return policy. And as a result, Consumer Reports wanted to step in this new brave world of the internet and say, there's got to be a better way. And we have to put the consumer first. And I had the good fortune of working on the PR campaign that launched all of that in the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post and the New York Times, et cetera, and really got the face of the consumer in front of Internet 1.0. And that's why 20 years later, I'm so excited to have Consumer Reports on the show today, because we are still fighting that battle. Isn't that right? To putting consumers at the center of the discussion of the internet, of AI, of Web3, whatever frontier we are bracing for, that's still really important. Can I just start up by asking maybe a broader question? What do you think of as the state of consumers at this moment in the face of ideas like trust and fraud and all of those issues that kind of make us feel a little bit nervous right now? How do you see it just in the bigger picture where we stand?
I'm happy to take that question.
Great, Ginny. Thanks.
I think we are seeing a pace of innovation in the market that is completely unprecedented. And so what that means as a consumer is there's, first of all, the delight of getting to try new things all the time, but also this lag of not actually understanding how these new products and experiences work, and not knowing what to trust or who to trust as this clip of new products accelerates faster and faster. And so I think people are hungry for signals of who to trust and what to trust, even as they're excited to try a lot of things. And especially with kind of the pace of development of AI and some of the new patterns we're seeing as far as how people receive information, but also how people make decisions. Consumers are needing to adapt to a very different information environment and decision environment than we've experienced in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you both get here? What is the origin story for both of you coming into both Consumer Reports, but also wanting to be defenders of the consumer?
So innovation has always been part of my work, and it's been a winding path to getting that formal title or role as I have right now. I came up through media, as you mentioned, leading strategy and brand initiatives for Time Warner, where I learned how powerful storytelling could be. And it was wildly creative, and I love the scalability, the creativity, all of it. But something was missing for me at that time, and I wanted to feel more connected to people and to purpose. So I took a leap back in 2015 and I launched my own impact consultancy. And at the time, I really fell in love with helping organizations bring these big ideas that they had to life with real world impact. And that's when I began to see that innovation is actually intentional change that shifts power. And all too often, as we know and we sadly see, that power shift doesn't actually include the people that are being left out of the conversation. And that's what really ultimately led me to CR, where we're working on behalf of all the consumers. And so at CR, we're reimagining what it means to serve the public interest in a digital age that continues to evolve, as you said, at a remarkable pace, especially now. And for me, innovation is deeply personal, where it's about how we build the future that serves all of us.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people are getting left behind in this. We thought we had a digital divide at Internet 1.0, but it's becoming even more vast, right?
Completely.
As we watch our grandmothers pick up their smartphones and order off of Amazon, I probably get a call once a month from my mom about, I just got a scam call, right?
Yep.
Someone is just asking me for my banking information.
The pace of technology definitely, it just outpaces what else we can be doing in other forms of legislation and social mores. So it's really tricky.
Yeah. And coming to this place now, I want to get into some of the incredible work that CR is doing. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the innovations that you're working on and the innovations that you've led they're going to impact all of us?
Sure. I'll start. I'm Jenny, and then can pass to Leah to add some more color. But we've talked about how the market is changing really rapidly. We're interested in places where consumers are concerned and looking for solutions for how to navigate their lives online. And so what that has meant for our team and where we've chosen to focus the past few years is, first of all, we've done a very deep dive into data privacy. Data privacy is a really important issue in the digital marketplace, but it's an issue that very few organizations have the right incentive structure to solve. People have a lot of hesitation about government having access to their data. Certainly, companies are incentivized to monetize consumer data as much as they can. And so we occupy a really unique position in the market as a nonprofit with a mission to be consumer first and to be a watchdog for individuals. We have a really unique role to play in data privacy. And so we've focused a lot of our innovation time and attention in that space. Additionally, just because AI has come bursting onto the scene in the past few years with insane velocity and a lot of hype around it, we've also been doing our part to make sure that the way AI becomes woven throughout the market really serves consumers and their interests by delivering quality information to them and also by helping them make great decisions and transact more easily. And so for both of these problems, both for data privacy and responsible AI, Consumer Reports is interested in what needs to happen advocacy and policy wise to ensure a safer market for consumers, as well as what sorts of products or services we can offer to just make that day-to-day easier for everyday people. Our team really focuses on the latter, on the innovation and products and services that will be of use to individuals in this blazing fast market change. But the advocacy very much informs and inspires our work, and in many ways is kind of part and parcel of the work we do as our product development really tries to amplify those advocacy wins.
Yeah. So if we take a step back, like for some of my listeners around the world might not know, Consumer Reports has been kind of like the handbook, the guidebook for consumers who wanted to make any major purchase in our lives throughout the 20th century, right? I mean, you wouldn't think about buying a car or a refrigerator, a blender, even, without consulting Consumer Reports first. Just for my listeners who might not know, or some of my younger listeners who might not have had copies of Consumer Reports sitting on their coffee table growing up, tell us a little bit about Consumer Reports and its background, and then we'll jump into some of this amazing bridge that you're creating into these products and services today.
Sure. CR has an incredible legacy. We're talking about a nearly 90-year-old organization that started off as Consumers Union, always fighting on behalf of the consumer. And, we've been alongside the people for so many pinnacle moments of life, including fighting for seatbelt safety in cars, right? And so this happens all along the past 90 years. And, we have these pillars internally where we really kind of focus a lot of our work around financial fairness. And as you said, product safety and sustainability and privacy and security online, especially as the digital marketplace continues to proliferate. What many people don't know about CR, though, is that we are nonprofit. We are entirely independent. And so this source of scientific rigor for which we have all of our investigations, all of our product ratings and reviews, it's a trusted source, which especially nowadays has become so critical and more important. The thing that surprised and delighted me most about CR when I first, was growing up and learning about the organization is the breadth of advocacy work that's happening. I mean, we have an entire consumer impact division that's filled with advocates fighting on a state and federal level to ensure that all the bills that are being passed are actually, again, shifting that power of balance. So it's more, in support of you and me versus the corporation or the institution. And so just this legacy of fighting for the consumer, fighting for the individual, and trying to give a voice to those that don't have it and pushing for this collective action is truly inspiring, and especially now needed more than ever.
Yeah.
I can add too that the genesis of Consumer Reports really was related to the rise of advertising. In the 1930s, advertising started to pick up in a big way, and there was a concern that consumers may believe everything they saw in ads and not have objective, independent information about what products were performing and which ones were just being overhyped in the media or in advertising. And so a lot of our approach throughout Consumer Reports history has been to secret shop for products, to test them in our labs, to document how they perform and even score them. So we rate them and we review them, and then to publish these objective facts and figures so that people can make really informed decisions about what to buy. Of course, at this point, advertising has been around for a long time, but the ways in which we are advertised to have really shifted. Think about like the 10 blue links on Google, where often the first one or two are ads that have been placed directly in our line of sight as we're trying to make a decision. Or even in the kind of chatbot world that we're entering into, you can imagine a world where advertisers are paying to be the answer that the chatbot gives you without giving you a lot of choice or awareness of the rest of the market or the selection of products available. And so, though Consumer Reports has needed to adapt to so many different technology changes and marketplace changes, we've really had this mission that has been consistent the whole time, related to helping consumers make informed choices and delivering objective and independent information. And that has been in the form of a paper magazine over the years. Now it's in the form of a website with a subscription. And we hope to be able to evolve our form factor into the future to continue to be relevant. So one of the things we've worked on is a chatbot interface called Ask CR that answers any question you have about products from only using CR's objective sources, our ratings, reviews, the reporting that our journalists do, et cetera. And so the thought is people need trusted information more than ever, as we're starting to get information from so many places and in so many forms. Some of those places aren't even human anymore. So we're hoping to continue to be a source of trust and kind of quality for products available.
Yeah. And, seeing reviews, I remember the era when you could go and buy reviews, that was a purchasable product of need 5,000 positive reviews. We can do that for you. The same way you could go and buy followers on Twitter and a lot of people don't know that those reviews are fake. Now you see on websites, verified buyer. But I don't know. My guess is you could probably buy verified buyer reviews too, right? My favorite, if you have some downtime, check out Amazon and check out the reviews for milk. You will laugh yourself silly, by the way, just on the comment section on reviews for milk, like didn't live up to expectations, or like the ones you're seeing about the National Park Service now is just like the Grand Canyon. I thought it was something else. It's just a big hole. But on our side, we live and breathe by them. And the CR app, I know for me, I didn't even think about buying a car. I didn't think about buying a mattress without going to you guys, because even what seems to be objective on the internet isn't. Even those test a mattress review sites, those are all set up by the mattress companies. Like it's just incredible. So I get it.
Right.
You guys keep up with every new thing that pops up to thwart us just getting reliable information.
And Susan, it's interesting you mentioned milk as an example, because milk was one of the first things that Consumer Reports tested back in the day. Like it was a time when people were getting their milk from their local milkman or milkwoman. And we looked into the quality of that milk and which ones kind of were healthy and devoid of chemicals and those sorts of things. We even continue that work now. One of the big investigations we did in the past year was on infant baby formula and making sure the infant baby formula didn't have contaminants, raising alarm bells for the brands that did. So even though I think a lot of people imagine Consumer Reports as a source of information on those big ticket purchases like cars and refrigerators, we do a lot of food safety work, and some of these more everyday purchases have always been core to our mission too.
Yeah. And I can't imagine it's easy, because industry and government legislators, right, who may or may not be receiving some additional supports for their campaigns from various organizations, you do so much advocacy work. It's a challenge to kind of get to constantly bear the banner of the consumer in the face of so much well-moneyed and very powerful opposition to quote unquote progress. It's got to be a challenge.
For sure. And our colleagues in the advocacy realm just do phenomenal work every day, fighting that uphill battle.
So let's talk about that, because fighting that uphill battle is essentially storytelling. Like you do it with amazing research and facts and figures behind what you're doing, but you're also as the innovation team, you're looking to what's coming next, right? The threats that are on the horizon. So what are you seeing right now? And tell us about some of the innovations that you're working on.
So we mentioned that data privacy has been a big focus for us. One of the reasons why is that our advocates have been doggedly chasing data privacy legislation and making sure it is enacted in as many states as possible. So CR advocates were very much behind the passing of the first consumer privacy law in California called the California Consumer Privacy Act, which went into implementation in 2020. And that kind of strain of being out ahead, voicing potential harms to consumers, maybe even before individuals realize, and making sure that we have strong policies in place to protect individuals, that's a huge part of what they do. As the innovation team, we were really interested in making sure that the brilliant work of our advocates was also able to be used and felt by everyday people on the ground. And when it comes to something like data privacy, it's actually a very complicated topic. There are a lot of legal aspects for a lot of individuals to exercise a privacy right that they really have under the law, may even require hiring a lawyer. Like it's just a hard space where you need a lot of technical knowledge to even be able to be effective in managing your privacy and having more meaningful control over the data that companies are collecting about you. So identifying that, we realized there was an opportunity to bring a product to market that would make it very easy for an everyday person to use the privacy rights that our advocates had fought for so doggedly. And so we were able to compel our leadership and convince Consumer Reports executives that this same subject area that was a worthy focus of our advocacy work could also be an excellent opportunity to flex our innovation muscles and bring a new product to market that could generate revenue to further power the mission. So we often talk about this double bottom line, something that extends the mission and produces enough revenue to be financially self-sustaining and to keep the work going. And we were able to pitch privacy as a space that really had that nice harmonious cycle of mission, advocacy, product, revenue. And through that, we were able to deliver this permission slip product that is now used by hundreds of thousands of consumers across the country as they look to manage the data that companies collect about them.
So let's talk about that for a minute. I downloaded the permission slip app on my phone when Leah and I met up, and I think I needed to take a step back and just think about what the implications of that. When we think about data privacy, I mean, I don't know anybody who's read it terms and conditions ever. It's probably the longest legal document. I think it's longer than like my apartment lease, like in most cases, right? We're signing away so much of what we don't even know. We don't know how our data gets used. We don't even know we're entitled to protect it. Can you just give us an example when we talk about data protection, what we're even talking about here? Like, can we make it real for us so we know what we're signing away when we sign those terms and conditions?
Absolutely. Well, I'll talk a little bit too, because this has to do with even just how the tool was actually built, which was with the people, not just for the people in a vacuum.
Mm.
And, to your point, Susan, getting people to act, especially around something that is so abstract or exhausting as data privacy, is incredibly tricky. And so, as Ginny mentioned, once CCPA was implemented in 2020, we wanted to set out to find out how easy it was for Californians to actually exercise these new rights. And so we set out talking with and surveying so many individuals, hundreds of people, to find out just how easy is it. And of course, we learned that the process was so inconsistent and frustrating, and companies weren't honoring requests or being very transparent or forthcoming about what they had. And so that was the insight that was actually a spark when we found that there was a clause in the law that actually said that consumers can appoint an authorized agent to act on their behalf to help intermediate these very, very obscure transactions and interactions with companies. And so we built Permission Slip, which was bringing our own agent solution to the market so that it could actually make it as easy and simple as you clicking a button to exercise your rights. And it was the people's stories that were the catalyst for us actually building Permission Slip, as well as getting a lot of effective advocacy off the ground and just listening to what the people needed, which was understanding just how they could actually exercise these rights.
So take us through Permission Slip. Like, how did you pitch it, first of all? Like, when you were thinking of conceiving, this is the Innovation Storyteller Show. So what's the story that you told internally that got other leaders at CR excited about this possibility?
There were a few different dimensions of the story we told internally about permission slip. One was tracking the policy landscape and
Mm.
seeing just how rapidly new states were adopting privacy laws. Not only that, but privacy laws were passing with unfathomable margins. I think the California privacy law passed with 96% favorability among Californians, which is just
What?
unheard of.
For
So,
anything. I
uh,
mean, people can't even agree, whether or not you should turn right on red. I mean, nothing. That's incredible.
exactly. So we were noticing that there was not only interest in state houses, but also when these issues were going to the ballot, consumers were voting overwhelmingly in favor of having these rights. And part of what we wanted to address is based on our own surveys. CR does nationally representative surveys every year with thousands and thousands of consumers. We were seeing in those surveys that people were deeply concerned about data privacy, but they felt like there was nothing they could do about it. And we were interested in this learned helplessness that we kind of identified, where people on the one hand didn't want companies to have their data, but on the other hand felt like all they could do was throw their hands up, because how can you hide from Google or Facebook in like 2020, right? It's
Right. Or open your Mac, or right, just even start a computer. It feels like you get terms and conditions just by buying a new computer, and you agree to like, oh yes, would you like the contents of everything that lives on my computer? Like I just learned that, right, Microsoft Word, its web version is everything that you type is now available to Microsoft.
Mhm.
Unless you specifically turn it off. And
Right.
who knew
Yeah,
that
exactly.
on switch was even on?
And
What were
that's one of the problems about data privacy in the US is we live in this opt-out model. The assumption is you opt in for your data to be used for everything unless you proactively opt out. And I think some of the disconnect we were seeing is people understood that their data was automatically opted in for all these things, but they didn't recognize that there was a right to opt out or know how to use that right to opt out. And so that's what we wanted to provide is like one, education. What data are these companies collecting? So we have these cute little recipe cards in permission slip where we basically diagram companies' privacy policies. So we break down for you exactly what categories of data that company is collecting. And then we say, you decide. You decide if it is worth it for Airbnb to have your home address. Like you decide, you're the consumer. If you're still using Airbnb, it's probably really nice that they have your home address. They can bill you, they can let you know about offers for places you might want to travel, whatever else. But if you haven't used Airbnb in 10 years, maybe they don't need it. Or another example is Foursquare. I don't know if you remember that product that was a big deal
sure?
in the
I
early
checked in
2000s.
everywhere. I was the queen
Exactly.
only of my office. That's what I came to find.
Right. You could become the mayor of your local coffee shop, for
That's
example,
right.
by visiting a lot and checking in, right? So that was really cool. It was fun for people to be the virtual mayor, whatever else. But now that same company has become a data broker. They collect location data about individuals. They are wielding and selling that data behind people's backs in ways people don't understand. And you know what? Last time I got any value out of Foursquare personally was in the early 2000s when I was mayor of my coffee shop. So I think it's high time that they stop collecting my location data, that I really cut ties with that company that's not providing value to me anymore. And so a lot of what we're seeking to do in permission slip is bring up examples of different companies, help people understand what data those companies are collecting, and then give people a choice about whether that exchange of data is meaningful to them because they're still getting value out of the service or the company, or whether it's time to cut the cord because this company is no longer serving me and I don't want my data to be exposed in a leak or to be sold to market things to me, et cetera, et cetera.
It makes sense, right? And for my European listeners, they're like, time to step out of the dark ages, America, because we've had this GDPR thing, we've had data protection. Why such a disparity between, other countries and the United States? Are we just like so gung-ho with our new innovations and initiatives that this is a secondary thought for most innovation leaders?
Well, I guess there's a question of why is it so different here in the US? Part of it is a policy answer. The European default is you're opted out. The US default is you're opted in. So that's why when you go to Europe, you start seeing all these pop-ups on every website you visit where you have to press OK that they're going to take your
Like
cookies or
Consent
whatever to see the
City,
site.
right? It's
Right. It's
like
consent city
all
over
about
here. Right.
consent. Right.
Right. So there are pros and cons to that. It's nice to remember on every site that like there's a privacy or a data exchange going on, but also it's exhausting to dismiss all of the pop-ups, right? In the US, we don't have the pop-ups, but we also don't have as much awareness among everyday people about the data being collected. So part of this is just like a policy difference between the two places. But I also think that there is a consumer education gap on a lot of this, and people feel helpless because they haven't been educated on their data and how it works and how it moves through companies and when it's providing value to them and when it's not. And so that's a lot of what we're seeking to do with Permission Slip is help with data literacy, but in a way that feels very fun and applied and actionable, and like your life is going to be a little bit cleaner on the other side.
I had this sensation it was like Rocket Money for data. Like I can go and see all my subscriptions. Rocket Money can cancel my subscriptions. Like you tell me where my data is being used, and then you can say no, thank you, and I can click off of those sites that I don't want to share my data with anymore. So was it a hard push internally to get folks on board with Permission Slip? And what about adoption from the consumer? What's that been like?
It's interesting. It was one of the first times we were really productizing a lot of our advocacy work. So it was a really interesting, just life cycle moment of, seeing the really critical work that, underpins all of the advocacy work that is going on, and then getting to actually put it into a tool that let consumers actually exercise their new rights. And so it's been this really awesome evolution. And internally, there's been a lot of support for, again, how do we actually take the work our advocates are doing and make it something that is usable, exercisable, workable by the consumer. Externally, it's interesting when we launched this, again, we were thinking back to how are we going to get people to act around data privacy? It feels like it might be a really niche subject matter, right? So how do we get people to care? And so, as Ginny had mentioned earlier, we were kind of leaning into this helplessness where a lot of consumers and a lot of individuals often feel like there's nothing I can really do. It's whatever's happening is happening. And we often opt for convenience over, right? Fill in the blank. And so this was an opportunity for us to give consumers back some of that power and that agency. And so we framed really the story with consumers around rights and agency. And it wasn't just us offering this service, but it was offering the consumers ability to say, enough, stop selling my data. And, it's trying to transform frustration into action. And what we did is, because while CR does have that reputation of this trusted independent brand, we knew we needed to link up with those, savvy journalists and other trusted sources and like-minded individuals to help us spread the word. And so that was a lot of what we did. And really, it launched with pure earned media play. And
Wow.
it was really amazing. There was no marketing spent, no marketing dollars initially at launch. And we saw a huge trend happening in the marketplace with adoption. And of course, our core belief of this is that you shouldn't have to pay to exercise your rights. And so Permission Slip launched and has always been available for all for free. Right? There is a paid tier, which Ginny can talk more about, what that encompasses, but that doesn't replace or mitigate the ability for everybody to have access to exercise their rights for free. And so this, full circle moment of just, framing a story and ensuring people that it is your right to be able to reclaim your data, to tell companies to stop selling your data, and that is your power, and we want to help you take back that power, was very compelling.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm sitting on the board of a startup right now. It's still in stealth mode, but they're doing the same with health data. Because you go for a lab test, you wind up signing off on things. Your personal results aren't necessarily called out, but they are certainly sold in aggregate to other people. So like even tests that we're not even necessarily aware of, and the story of Henrietta Lacks, and her story, her DNA being sold and used for a bazillion other findings. We're just learning about where our data is going, where it's ending up, and who's profiting from it. Yeah.
Completely.
So this is not at all like a straightforward path, though. There must have been some bumps along the way. What have you found? Were there some hard won victories in setting this up too with permission slip?
I can talk about one kind of disconnect between a need that was being voiced by individuals and where we knew we could meaningfully move the needle with permission slip. So I think when a lot of people imagine data privacy, their minds immediately go to Google and Facebook because those companies just have an unfathomable trove of data about most of us. And I think people are very eager to figure out how to challenge that power that big tech seems to wield over them. And maybe data action could be a way to do that. So we are getting lots of requests from our users. Please put Google in permission slip. Please put Facebook in permission slip. We want to manage our data with these companies. And for us, it was a bit of a moral dilemma because on the one hand, we want people to have choice and they should be managing their data with whoever they want. On the other hand, the consequences of deleting my Google data would be disastrous for me. Every email I've sent in my entire life is stored with Google. Like all of my work documents are stored with Google. A lot of my personal life documents are stored with Google. And to delete that is actually to put me in a really precarious position as an individual. And the same can be true of so many companies one might consider deleting data from. We think about airlines. Like if I delete all of my Delta data, every frequent flyer mile I've earned that I can use instead of money in the future goes down the toilet. And that is a bummer for me. And so we were trying to navigate both wanting to extend choice to people, but also really helping them understand the downside risk of potentially taking action when there may be data that they really rely on to live their lives or to save money. And so within permission slip, we did end up launching a special feature about Google and Facebook. It was a feature where we introduced a lot of intentional friction. So we did not make it easy to delete your data from Google or Facebook, but we provided kind of a very long list of all the things one would need to do on your own to go through that. So we were democratizing the knowledge, but we didn't want to create a situation where, with an accidental slip of a finger, all of your Google history was deleted.
My God. Yeah, that's a little terrifying, right? Because yeah, it's kind of like our digital oxygen on some level, right? If that's our
Exactly.
operating system. Yeah.
Exactly. So we did ultimately introduce this feature. And then what we found, lo and behold, is actually people didn't want to use the feature because I guess we did a good job educating them about the kinds of data that these companies have and what that could mean for your life. Every photo of you shared on the internet forever deleted, so you forget what you look like in middle school from Facebook. There are just so many consequences that are unforeseen. But so we launched the feature. It wasn't super popular. But we're glad we did it in the sense of being able to answer a call from our users. We ended up deprecating the feature recently just because it was so underutilized and it was quite expensive to maintain. And we found that though people had asked for it, no one was really using it. But that was an example of, needing to wanting to be responsive to the individuals who were keen to really be active in managing their data, but also needing to do so with a healthy dose of friction and like a really education oriented mindset about the knock-on effects of some of these actions.
Yeah. So it's really fascinating, right? We don't know what we don't know until what we know until we put it in the marketplace, right? And we really see what works. This is every innovation pilot in the history of innovation pilots. So I want to ask you, as you're moving forward, what's weighing heaviest for you as an innovator today? What kind of keeps you up a little bit at night? What are you thinking about in terms of our life as consumers and the things that you want to address in the future?
It's how quickly this landscape is changing. AI systems, we touched upon that just briefly before, but it's advancing at lightning speed, and not just technically, but commercially. And so when you talk about how we all as consumers engage with the market, how we discover, how we evaluate, how we ultimately purchase and manage those relationships with whether it's a brand, a merchant, and others, all of that is shifting. And the really frightening thing that terrifies us, and which is where CR has such a really powerful role to play, is that tech is evolving so rapidly to mostly maximize profits, right, from an enterprise standpoint. And so the incentive structure behind the tools is deeply profit driven, and the power imbalance continues to grow. And more and more consumers are starting to understand a bit, but there's still a lot of unknown around just how these systems are actually making decisions about them or for them. Whether it's a price you see on a certain product, whether it's a credit you're offered, the content you're shown. We talked about advertising. It's just getting that much, more opaque. And so for us at CR and especially at the Innovation Lab, we're thinking about who's defending consumers in this next wave of the digital marketplace. And we really see this kind of as the next frontier of consumer protection and advocacy that we're focused on. And as we think about how do we keep pace with AI, we're starting to work closely with Stanford. We're actually standing up a research collaboration with them and some other academic researchers and industry partners all around how do we start thinking about the pro-consumer agentic system, right? How can we build AI agents that actually act with a duty of loyalty and a duty of care to the consumer? And what would that look like? So a lot of the R&D work that, we're working on and that Ginny's team is really, knee deep in is around, let's start prototyping and building and experimenting with pro-consumer agentic systems. We can learn from a lot of the applied research that's out there. And, ultimately our goal is, how might we start really defining these designs and patterns that we can ultimately popularize? And just, the ultimate goal of CR, of course, right, is we want to make sure that this marketplace is competitive and the consumers continue to have choice. And
That for me, that point alone is one of the most compelling things because when Google search engine came along, right, we had infinite pages of, results that you could look at in part of your search. Now, 90% of them were irrelevant and it drove you a little bit crazy until, things started being ranked, search engine optimization, right? All of the traffic patterns they wound up building up to. There was a little bit of some kind of consensus about what was important for your particular Boolean search. But now with AI, you're getting one definitive answer for questions posed, right? You put a prompt in, maybe you need to prompt it a couple of times, but for citing sources or different perspectives or things like that, you really just get kind of like this voice of God coming at you. And as a consumer, it's challenging. It's even more challenging for all of you, since you're on the front line of it, to think of it like, how do we provide choice at a time where AI is driving to one answer for everything? And that's hats off to you. Kudos to you, because that is not an easy issue to solve. So good luck with that. but I just feel grateful that I know that there's someone who has the consumer's interests at heart in the midst of all of this full speed ahead AI revolution. It's good to know that you're here.
So appreciate that. And the one thing I'll add before I hand it over to Ginny too is the thing that reassures us amidst this, very heavy weightedness, right, of just, what we're up against is the fact that, similar to the folks at Stanford and other academics that we're working with and other industry, there's a lot of like-minded individuals and organizations that are out there that we're linking up with that do also really care about making sure that consumers are actually at the heart of some of this decision making. And so that is the one thing that we are finding more and more reassuring in a lot of our work and conversations.
So I typically ask these hot seat questions at the end of my podcast, and they are, what is the greatest innovation of all time? What innovation team would you have loved to join if you'd had the opportunity? And there's a last one, which is, what is the innovation that you think the world needs now? And so I can ask you the other two, but I think from your perspective, I'm most interested in, what do you think the innovation is that the world needs now?
I can start.
Go ahead, Ginny.
I think the nature of evidence is shifting very rapidly, and the fact that AI generated content is widely found already across the internet, but that a lot of people haven't been trained on how to identify AI generated content, both like photo and video, as well as written words, and that the AIs are getting so good that it's frankly impossible even for trained experts to detect the difference between generated content and human created content. So I think we need an innovation that really separates human generated from AI generated evidence. And I think that having something that made it clear to people the authorship behind what they're seeing would make for a much healthier information environment and help people determine who they should trust.
And what about you, Leah? What do you think is the innovation that the world needs now?
Honestly, it has a lot to do with that, right? Because as more and more people are turning to AI to help them solve any problem, any dilemma, any question, just having some kind of transparency, which is the problem, right? You don't know all the different ideas and individuals that are actually feeding this one machine that is serving you up, as you said, this one apparently certain answer. So something to demystify that. And then I also think about it through a lens of accessibility. And so if you think about it from a place of universal design, how do we make sure that any of those alerts and all of that awareness is actually being delivered in a way that is accessible to all of those with different lived experiences? And so I think that's always a challenge with tech in general, of just thinking about, for those that might not be able to see in a traditional manner or type in a traditional manner, how that information is being relayed.
Fantastic. I think the innovation the world needs now is more Nutella in virtually every place. That's just me. I have a problem.
I won't fight you on that one.
So where can people get in touch with you to learn more about the Permission Slip app? Where can my listeners turn to get more about information about data privacy and consumer protections?
They should absolutely find us online, which is going to be the easiest place. And we have actually, and it's so funny, you would think I would have this handy, and I don't, shame on me. But if you go to innovation.consumerreports.org, you will find a lot of the work covered there as far as what we're doing, what our advocates are working on, everything that's just, kind of at this new frontier as we were talking about. And there's also a place that you can click and send us an email, get in touch, because we want to hear from you, whether it's just to learn more about some of the work that's underway, whether it's to build with us. We definitely at the lab do not build in a vacuum, and we're consistently looking to bring in, different perspectives and tech expertise. And so whether you're a researcher, a builder, just a thinker who wants to help solve some of these really, large problems, we'd love to link up.
Fantastic. And you can go to the App Store or Google Play to find Permission Slip as well.
Both Permission Slip and the Consumer Reports app.
Right.
And so, so both of those are available, and they're two distinct apps.
Right. Ask CR, that's the other one.
So Ask CR is actually, it's a feature within Consumer Reports.
Ah, okay.
And so it's the Consumer Reports app. And when you go on there, you will easily find a way to engage with via Ask CR.
Fantastic. Leah Hunter and Ginny Fahs, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Susan, so much for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
I truly hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you did, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss the next story that could inspire your own. And if you want to learn more about me or how I can help you and your team to become master storytellers to get your big idea to its finish line, head over to innovationstorytellers.com and schedule a call with me.